Hello everyone, I'm Tristan, also known as the DIY cabin guy. I'm currently building a small cabin by myself right behind my house. This is the first time that I'm building something like this as I do not have any building experience. The goal will be to use the cabin as a short-term rental once it is done. I'm doing this video specifically for the Logan Timber Living Magazine's YouTube channel, as I know you guys love anything about rustic homes and cabins. In the first video, we had stopped at the floor platform. The next step was to tackle building the walls using 2x6 studs. I installed the wall sheathing while the walls were still laying flat, which made it much easier. I built some homemade wall jacks in order to lift these walls into place. It was such a nerve-wracking endeavor, but fortunately, everything went as planned. The front and rear walls were a completely different ballgame because they were longer and much taller. Building these walls was a lot more challenging as each stud was different in height and I had to get it all right for it to fit perfectly. Raising the front wall was intimidating, so I got help from my father-in-law, as I think it would have been dangerous to do it by myself. Thankfully, it did go well. Finally, doing the rear wall was very similar, and at that point I had enough experience to feel comfortable about the process. Since this cabin will have a cathedral ceiling, I needed a proper ridge beam to support the roof structure. I had to use a 2-ply, 20-foot long LVL. I thought about using the wall jacks for this, but I ended up having my father-in-law giving me a hand again. It was quite heavy, but we did manage to install it using just a few ropes and ladders. The only challenge we ran into is that I had to frame some pocket to receive the beams on each side, which were the exact width, so we struggled to get the second ply of LVL in it. We had to kind of bit it in to completely, get it in. The roof rafters had to be 2x12 to meet the proper insulation requirement. Cutting the rafters properly to do a bird's mouth cut was challenging at first, but I quickly got a hang of it. The more challenging aspect was to install these rafters alone, as they were long and heavy. I came up with a routine which ended up working well. After that, it became a pretty repetitive process and it was fairly easy. The next step was to install the roof sheathing. Once again, I was lucky to get some help from both my father and my father-in-law for this task, as it would have been fairly difficult to push 4x8s of OSB by myself all the way to the roof and nail them in place. We figured out a simple system using wall jacks to simply slide the sheets onto the roof. After that, it was time to place each sheet in a staggered fashion and nail them into place at each joist location. You will also see that I started wearing a safety harness and tied myself to a rope. Being on a roof this high can be dangerous, and the slightest mistake could lead to dramatic outcomes. The next step was to install the building wrap to protect the wall sheathing from potential moisture getting behind the future siding. It wasn't easy to maneuver the tall roll by myself, but I ended up finding my rhythm. Technically, you're not supposed to use staples, but working by myself, it was the only way I could install the housing wrap alone. I would hold the wrap in place with one hand and use a stapler hammer with the other hand. Once everything was in place, I would come back and place cap nails every 12 to 16 inches directly into the stud. The most challenging part was to install the wrap on the tall front and rear wall. I had to get all the way up on the ladder and struggle my way through the installation, but I found that by going slow and taking my time, it was absolutely doable. After that, I was ready to build the front deck of the cabin. The first and most important step was to place the back flashing, which will protect the house from water. The ledger needs to be installed with special ledger screws per code. These screws will fasten the ledger to the cabin rim band and make for a very solid connection. After that, I was ready to start installing the deck joists, which was fairly simple. I connected them to the ledger using the appropriate Simpson hangers and nails. The last step was to install the rim band, and the deck was done for now. I wanted to wait to install the deck boards since I didn't want to damage them, so I decided to just lay a couple of sheets of plywood on it for now. Windows were something I had never installed and felt a little overwhelming. Obviously, the most important part is the flashing again, as you don't want any water to make it behind the windows and into the wood framing. The typical steps were to protect the windowsill with flexible tape, placed the windows with silicone on the flanges, nailed them in place after verifying that it was square, and installed more flashing tape on the edges and on the top. And finished the installation with a drip cap above the window and more tape so that the water coming from above the window would drip over it and not behind it. Once I did one well, I felt pretty confident and was able to do the rest fairly easily. The roofing underlayment is similar to what the house wrap is to the walls. Because I'm in a region where snow and ice are common, yeah, you don't say. It was recommended to use an ice shield underlayment for the bottom part of the roof. The drawback is that this type of underlayment is extremely heavy and was very, very difficult to install by myself. It took me hours to wrestle it into place. After that, for the upper part of the roof, a classic underlayment is sufficient. And that one you're seeing was light and easy to install. Doing the other side was a little scary as that's the high side of the cabin, so I wore my harness again, attached myself to the roof and took my time. The next step was to finish the front porch. The drawback was that these 6x12 beams were super heavy and thankfully I was able to get some help lifting them into place. Then I needed to place the center post and a new beam to extend the roof line, and which would also support the front porch rafters. These rafters were smaller than the ones inside the cabin, so they were much easier to lift in place by myself. Then I had to use hangers to attach all my rafters and then place these diagonals, which would really enhance the timber look of the entrance. After that, I had to do the same thing I did with the roof and install the plywood sheathing and underlayment to finish the roof completely. So that is it for now. I still have tons of work ahead of me. I will have to be working on the bathroom interior walls, the electrical, the plumbing, the siding, and so on. I'm still very happy and proud that I made it this far. So I thank you so much for watching, and I will be back on this channel to give you another update in a few months once I make more progress. And if you want to see every step of the construction process, head over to my YouTube channel at the DIY Cabin Guy. Thank you.